When we had last left Team Watcher, they were hanging out in a library, reading books. This is Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire, the Forgotten Sanctum. Ooh, welcome back. Welcome back. It's me, Deerwood Dave. I'm in these ruins, looking for Ingwithans. You got any of them Ingwithan fellers in here? I'm looking for some of their ancient relics. I need to collect them and put them in my... I don't know, what did they do with them? I'm gonna sell them on the Ingwithan black market. I'm gonna make a new sword from my money. I'm trying to shoot my shot here. I'm gonna impress Deerwood Daisy with my Ingwithan looting skills. I'm gonna buy her that fancy ring, the one that we always talked about, and I'm gonna marry her and grow a Vorless farm just like old Saint Widewin did, and we're gonna live a happy life. My first old Deerwood Dave. Oh, he's gotta clamber through some old Ingwithan ruins filled with some strange colored tendrils. They're the same color as Pillars of Adra. Probably just a coincidence and doesn't mean jack shit. Let's just ignore the fact that all these spores and stuff and shroomages and roots might be linked to Adra, because that's probably not true. Why would it be? These are just Ingwithan ruins. There's never any Adra in them. Never any, never been. Alright, let's see. What's in this? Oh my gosh, it's more books. Let's see. Have we read the Adir Empire? I'm not sure. This one could be important. Right? Well, Ooh, look. Yeah, we only had the original, which it seems we read a long time ago, because look, it's even before the shield. Interesting. But yeah, this could be very important to Avowed, depending on when and where it's set. Well, even irregardless of when and where it's set, it seems like it's going to focus on the Adiran Empire, right? Whether you're playing as an Adiran or you're playing against an Adiran? I don't know. The Adir Empire, Part 1, Origin. In approximate... No. Deerwood Dave does not... He's illiterate. He can't read. Fuck Deerwood Dave. Fuck me. Deerwood Dave is such a great thing that I've just created at the spur of the moment. Oh, Deerwood Dave. Oh my god. I love you, Deerwood Dave. In approximately 2200 AI, a group of tribes called the People of the Deer unified into a new civilization called the Adir Empire, or Kingdom. Whoops, I'm also illiterate. That's my secret. I am Deerwood Dave, it's me. The tribes, small and widespread over the land, knew it would be better for their continued existence to unify. The leaders of each tribe became advisors to the king, chosen by the group. Each advisor would still be lord over his people, but each lord would answer to the Fersening. How do you pronounce the O with the, like, umlauts or whatever on top of it? I have no idea. You know what? This is a thing with me in pronunciation guides. You know, like, you'll look up a word. Like, I mean, at least I do. Like, oftentimes I'll be reading a book in a game, I'll be like, I've never seen that word in my life, and sometimes I'll remember to go and look it up or whatever, right? Sometimes I'll remember to do something. And whenever I go look it up, I'm like, how do you pronounce this? And I see the pronunciation guide, I'm like, this doesn't help me at all. I don't understand how to read a pronunciation guide. No one ever taught me. How come no one taught you to... No one teaches you how to learn? It's just like memory. What the fuck? Man, I can't believe the American school system failed me in some way. But Good God. Yeah, I've no idea how to read through a pronunciation guide. So now it's come to a point where it's like, yeah, I'll just listen to a video of someone pronouncing, and then half the time it's like someone saying, yeah, this is how you pronounce Fairkening. It's good God. And then you just end up going your whole life pronouncing Fairkening like or saying First King. We're just going to keep saying First King. This decision turned out to be, sorry, what a tangent. This decision turned out to be exactly what was needed, and the Aediran kingdom thrived, spreading out over the land, establishing strong trade routes, and became known to be fair but shrewd businessmen. While the country thrived and internally there was little strife, there were still occasional skirmishes with the neighboring elven kingdom of Colquhoun. Right. Will we finally get a little bit of information here? I think we will, but even that, it's relatively limited compared to other civilizations we've read about, right? Not long after the kingdom was formed, the Aediran people began studying animancy, still largely unknown at the time. It was an exciting, terrifying new realm that Aediran scholars saw great potential in. This potential came to bear fruit in 2260 AI, when a group of animancers, working together, transferred the soul of a recently departed man into another body, creating the first of what would later come to be known as the undead. The reaction to this discovery was swift and decisive. Both the King of Aedir and the Church of Wodica condemned this event and the study or practice of animancy. Both the King of Aedir and the Church of Wodica condemned this event, and the study or practice of animancy was outlawed. Right, okay. It would never again be practiced openly on Aediran soul. Oh my God, I'm like a mess today. Conflicts with Colquhoun continued, escalating into a minor war in 2398 AI. Afterward, a treaty was signed, and the Kingdom of Aedir merged with Colquhoun to form the Aedir Empire. With the political and military strife now settled, the Aedir Empire would become an economic powerhouse, able to provide resources that were hard to find in other parts of the world. Their trade routes became some of the most lucrative in the world. I wonder what resources it was. The Aedir Empire Part 2, Expanding Borders. Will this be about, the Deerwood? In 2602 AI, Aediran explorers returned from over the ocean, telling tales of ruins and treasures there, and of expansive fields that were perfect for growing Vorlis. The explorers warned the First King that the locals were not friendly to outsiders, but the First King, seeing this as an opportunity to extend his empire and secure trade on another continent, sent more explorers. Over the next 20 years, the area that would become the Deerwood was investigated, mapped, and colonized. In 2623, the first permanent Aediran colonial settlements were established. 2623, okay. So that's when the Deerwood first started getting colonized, right? In 2602 is when they discovered, the Aediran Empire discovered, for their own purposes, they discovered the Deerwood and the people who were there. Let's see. I'm hesitant to say discovered because, there's already people there. Let's see. So 2602. Wow, so that's like almost about 200 years after they became the Empire. Which was really only, so it took about 200 years for the tribes to become an empire. Oh, wild. When did they actually become the kingdom? It doesn't really say. Oh, no, they became a kingdom in 2200. Okay. And then it took only 60 years for them to begin working on animancy and then quickly outlaw it. And then about 200, well, maybe a little bit less, about 150 years or so then they go on to become the Empire and merge with Colquhoun. And then 200 years later, they colonize the Dyrwood. Interesting. Huh. Okay. Very good to try and take note of these times, right? I feel like it would be better to see like a timeline to help visualize it a bit more, right? Timeline's excellent. Just an excellent invention. Whoever invented timelines, you did great, baby. Vorless fields were set up north of the forests in the Dyrwood. But between the conflicts of the Glonfathans and the War of the Broken Stone, it floundered. It wasn't until 2643 that the opportunity presented itself again. Oh, weird. Huh. The opportunity to set up Vorless fields deeper? Interesting. Okay. It wasn't until 2643 that the opportunity presented itself again. Some Aethasian pilgrims, wanting to escape persecution, established colonies and Vorless farming operations in the territory of Raed Saris. With Grand Valia on the verge of collapse, the first king wanted to ensure his hold on the purple dye trade would be established. He encouraged the settlement and even paid the pilgrims to set up in the New World. So Raed Saris had already existed there? Dyrwood's neighbor to the north, Raed Saris is a nation firmly rooted in its Aethasian faith. A fervor that took hold during the events of the Saints' War and remains even after the apparent death of Aethys. Huh. Weird. So did the Aediran Empire pilgrims know that Raed Sarans were already devout worshippers of Aethys? Weird, okay. Because what's interesting is that the Dyrwood it's not an island all to itself. It's not a complete analog to America, right? Like, there's other sections with not just Glonfathans, but other established civilizations like Raed Saris. And isn't Old Valia there as well to the south? Huh. Weird. So what did the Raed Sarans and the Old Valians have? What was their take on the Aediran Empire coming over to their continent? Where even is the Aediran Empire located at? I've looked at a few maps and I can't ever find it on there. It must be like in a completely different section, right? Anyway, with some Aethasian pilgrims wanting to escape persecution established colonies and Vorless farming operations in the territory of Raed Saris. With Grand Valia on the verge of collapse, the first king wanted to ensure his hold on the purple dye trade would be established. He encouraged the settlement and even paid to have the pilgrims set up in the New World. Because the first king was still trying to secure his name in the purple dye trade, he was unable to properly respond to Admeth Hadrit when he issued his ultimatum. To avoid a rebellion and leave himself time to oversee the Vorless farms in Raed Saris, the first king relented and made Admeth a grave palatine. In return for this concession, Admeth spent time and resources on the Dyrwood's trade and shipping routes, benefiting the first king with increased income. For 7 years, the Dyrwood provided Aedir with a steady income, leaving the first king time to ensure his trade system in Raed Saris was strong. With the first king's attention elsewhere, Admeth instituted the 10 Years Treaties, ending slavery in the Dyrwood and permanently removing one of the revenue sources provided by the Dyrwoodan explorers. The artifacts from the ruins scattered throughout the Dyrwood. At this point, the first king's word meant almost nothing to the citizens of the Dyrwood. Admeth Hadrit had replaced him as their true leader. Huh. But this also fails to, and maybe intentionally so, maybe they intentionally kept it open, but it fails to describe, like, how shitty practices like slavery even came to be in the Aediran Empire, right? Were they just always a slave-using society like I was talking about earlier? Is that what happened to the Colquhoun Elves when it says that they merged? I don't know. In order to undermine Admeth's standing, the first king found allies willing to explore the ruins against the treaty conditions and plunder them. Soon, Adir again had a supply of artifacts to sell. When his agents were eventually caught, the first king distanced himself from the operation, certain there was no way to link him to the proceedings. But the Grave, using means provided to him by his Glonfathan allies, discovered the evidence needed to prove the first king was behind the plunderers. The conflict that arose from this revelation led to Admeth declaring independence for the Dyrwood in 2668 AI. After a bloody 4-year-long war that resulted in the death of Admeth, the first king relented. Trying to keep control of the Dyrwood had become too costly. He signed treaties with the new Duke of the Dyrwood and returned his attention to Raed Saris, redoubling efforts on the Vorlus trade, which is still running today. You know what? It didn't occur to me until now, but it didn't occur to me until we created Dyrwood Dave, but the Ingwithan ruins and stuff, all of the artifacts that they were plundering, the reason why they would have value, isn't that because of their value of animancy? Who were they selling it to? Were they selling it to Grand Valia or Old Valia or whoever to the south? Because at the time, weren't the only two... Well, the Dyrwood would eventually come to be this as well, but the only three that really participated in animancy in a major way was first the Adirian Empire, as far as we know, and then Grand Valia, and then later, finally, the Dyrwood, because other ones had eventually outlawed it. So is the idea that they were although the Adirian Empire by this time had already outlawed the practice of animancy, they were still profiting majorly off of the back of something that they had outlawed. They had, found a loophole. Although they outlawed it, they certainly enabled Grand Valia to research and exploit it, right? Which makes it seem so fucking weird, because also a part of their motivation for outlawing it was not just the horror of it all, but it was backed by their religious systems as well, right? The Church of Woodica. They completely, condemned it, didn't they? And yet, at the same time, they just, hand behind their back, decide, oh yeah, well, wow, yeah, sure, all that stuff, great, but also, money, right? Very true to real life, I guess, right? How many times have we seen folks willing to sacrifice their values for a little, little something? All right, How come the Raed Sarens didn't have an interest in... Yeah, how come the Raed Sarens and the Valiants who are on that continent didn't see all of the Ingwithan ruins where the Glonfathans were hanging out and decide to go over there and just take that shit? How come... Because they're on the same continent, it's much harder for the Adirian Empire to get there and check all that out, right? Unless the mountain ranges were really that treacherous. But even then, you could just sail along the coast, which is a lot quicker than sailing across the entire sea, right? How come the Valians or the Raed Sarens didn't contest stuff with the Glonfathans? Especially if one of them was buying the artifacts in the first place, like the Valians. Maybe the Valians saw this as a way for them to also have a loophole, right? If we're to assume that the Valians were buying these artifacts, or at least were the primary buyer, surely other people were buying it as well, maybe even Raed Sarens, but I'm assuming they were selling it to Grand Valia, right? Well, I don't know, because they were undergoing their collapse, right? Who could buy it if they were undergoing collapse at the time? Their economic status must have been a clusterfuck at the time. So who was buying it? Weird. Who was buying this shit? Maybe it was just independent people, right? They sold it to like the government of the Adirian Empire sold out all of the artifacts to the private sector? Is that the idea? Like maybe archmages, for example. Maybe there were archmagi who bought a whole lot of that Ingwithan shit for whatever reason. Could be. And it does seem very weird. Even, like, that's another good reason for Granvalia to expand northward, is their failing economy, right? Maybe they had no, like, standing military force, or at least not one comparable to the Empire. The Aedirran Empire, I should say. Right? Maybe that's why they didn't try and raid the Glanfathans, or they wanted to keep good peace with them. Maybe a bit of both? For whatever reason? I don't know. Because even if Granvalia... Whether or not Granvalia was buying the artifacts from the Aedirran Empire, why wouldn't they just go, like, travel up northward a bit and raid some of those artifacts as well to sell and try and, like, prop their economy back up with the income from the artifacts, right? Because they were literally undergoing, like, this horrific shit. Like it said here somewhere, they were beginning their, like, their society's collapse. Huh. Interesting stuff. Alright. Still, very cool that we even have these questions to begin with, right? That's such a fascinating world that you can even have these questions, and it's open enough to where we could still get very satisfying answers, right? Or maybe those answers already exist and we just haven't seen it yet, or forgot it. The Blacksmith Knights, a short history of the Knights of the Crucible. If the blacksmith fails, the armor fails. If the armor fails, the soldier falls. Olrun Shinehyode. First Guildmaster of the Knights of the Crucible. The Knights of the Crucible have one of the most fascinating and rich histories in all of Eora, currently holding a position as an incredibly influential group in the Dyrwood. They come from humble beginnings. There may not be a single person in all the Dyrwood who knows exactly how much they owe to the Knights. The group has existed for years, long before they even came to be known as Knights. They started as a group of blacksmiths, led by Orlin Sinehyode, who came together to form a guild. Orlin felt it imperative for the members to unify, sharing their knowledge through the guild in order to keep the skills and techniques they had spent their lives perfecting. He called the guild the Crucible, insisting that, though their work was used for destruction, they should always be remembered as creators. That's pretty charitable. They would be known as the vessel that withstands the fire to deliver new form into the world, forged in the fire and all the stronger for the tribulation. Orlin, being a veteran of many battles, knew the importance of impeccably made armor and weaponry. He also espoused the necessity for members of the guild to be trained in martial combat. The only true way to make a proper suit of armor is to be the one who must wear it. Is this, like, meant to be analogous to America's, like, military-industrial system? Because it almost reads that way, doesn't it? Right? With how much the Dyrwood is very analogous in many ways to modern America, or just America, the United States of America. This almost reads as that. Oh wait, it's Olrun? Oh my god, I've been saying Orlin. Olrun led the guild for years, instituting a policy that any man who wanted to join must not only be a skilled blacksmith, but must also take the time to learn how to hold himself in battle. He added a training ground to their guild hall, and there was scarcely a minute of daylight that didn't see members out on the field, honing their fighting technique. Because of this, the guild earned the nickname Knights of the Crucible. They became a de facto militia for the Dyrwood, an honorable group that many turned to for help. They were known to be fair, ethical, and quick to respond. Interesting. The Knights chose Abaddon as their patron, dedicating their works to his name. To honor him, they incorporated his symbol into their own and wore it on their arms. Many of the Knights took this honor further, regardless of what material a suit of armor was made from. Something on the right arm was made with iron, celebrating Abaddon's moniker, the Iron Arm. Both of these traditions are followed by some of the knights to this day. Interesting. So they kind of spun out of control, right? Because by the time you meet them in Pillars of Eternity 1, they want you to infuse, like, the souls of soldiers into armor, right? They want you to, like, sacrifice their bodies to, like, imbue these weapons and armor with magical animancy power, right? And to create, like, constructs, don't they? Which, especially there, like, even just saying it here, it seems fucked up. But especially in the moment, it seemed real fucked up what was going on there. So much so that we didn't even complete that quest. The knight's smithing skill led them to be known throughout the land as the premier artisans of their craft, leading people to call any item of exquisite quality of the Crucible. Their training and dedication truly came into play during the War of Defiance, locally known as Hadrian's Rebellion. Ulrun, knowing the importance winning this war, sent out a call. All able-bodied knights were to join the militia. They quickly proved invaluable to the cause and helped turn the tide of the rebellion. This was particularly true in the Battle of Defiance Bay. Admeth had already been lost in a previous battle, and morale for the Deerwooden militia was failing. With the help of Glonfathan astrologers, the knights were able to rout the Imperial forces and secure victory for the Deerwood. Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. We had read that Admeth died during the war, but we don't really know how they ended up pulling it off at the end of the day, right? But apparently we do, right? Through this book. It was thanks to, ironically, Glonfathan's, right? As well as the Knights of the Crucible. The new Duke, grateful for the help, and knowing that without the Knights, the Deerwood would never have survived, made a decree. The Knights would thenceforth be welcomed into the Duke's castle and become his official royal guard. In recent years, the Crucible aspect has fallen by the wayside in favor of Knight. The requirement that members be proficient in both smithing and martial combat has loosened to the point that anyone who applies is guaranteed entrance, even if they possess little or no smithing experience. This is an allegation that is vehemently denied by the Knights. Very fascinating. I do like that they kind of started out all right? Like, I mean, it depends on who's writing this, but them being known to be fair, ethical, and quick to respond to, like, help people out. That's pretty dope. And of course, Abaddon, in general, so far, has been fairly dope. But, I do like that they sort of spun out and, I don't know, got corrupted, I guess. Okay. Look over here, we need to use our long stretch arms. The Dozens. Let's see, did we already read about the Dozens? No, I think we read about the bomb, right? Let's check here. Dozens. No, we haven't. Okay. The Dozens. Scarcely a decade ago on the Evan-Dewar Bridge, 7 men and 5 women fought valiantly to protect their homeland. They volunteered for the mission knowing it was up to them, and them alone, to prevent St. Widwin from crossing the bridge. They succeeded, even though they lost all but 4 of their number in the battle. And Widwin was on the bridge when the Godhammer detonated. The final 4 were lost in the blast as well, their sacrifice a testament to their dedication. The Dozens, a group ostensibly formed for the protection of the Deerwood, was founded in the honor of those men and women. Indeed, those 12 men and women are posthumously regarded by the Dozens as their true founders. Initially, the group dedicated itself to protecting Deerwood from invasion, patrolling the borders tirelessly in search of raided Saren forces, regrouping for another attack. When that attack never materialized, many of the Dozens thought the next threat might come from Aethasian loyalists living in Deerwood and began to turn their attention within. All new members of the Dozens are required to swear an oath to remember the sacrifice of their founders and remain vigilant against Rhaeadsaris and any followers of Aethys. To this end, worshippers of Aethys are routinely harassed by the Dozens. The mindset of this group may be hard for some to understand, as any fanatical devotion can sometimes overshadow the ideals. But the original Dozen knowingly sacrificed their lives for Dyrwood. From the Dozens' perspective, how can new members of the Dozens be any less committed to their country's welfare? What better way could there be to honor their founders? The Dozens are not a large group, but what they lack in size, they make up in fervent devotion to their cause and a gift for gaining the ear of commoners. This makes them a force to be reckoned with, and there is no more influential group in shaping the discourse surrounding Wydwin's legacy. Right. A small but very vocal minority of extremists in the group are calling for a new war with Rhaeadsaris. Talk of purging the Dyrwood of all followers of Aethys is also being touted. More recently, they have begun to see in the practice of animancy a possible cause to the legacy, and they have taken to the streets of Defiance Bay and the dirt roads of many distant settlements to make their case to the general public. Some point to this as one source of a recent surge in vigilantism and violence in the country. Holy shit. A lot of this went over my head in the first game. But holy fuck, the Dozens are just like, sure, yeah, sort of like the Crucible, the Knights of the Crucible. They started out with like noble intentions of like, yeah, we need to protect these people from the onslaught of this like living god who is coming and like laser blasting everybody. And now, years after all of that went down, they've become like a shitty nationalistic piece of shit group, right? They're very much like harassing people who worshipped Aethys, right? They're talking shit about Wydwin's legacy and all of that and how it may lead to animancy, right? Sort of like harkening back to the roots of the Aedirn Empire and how they outlawed animancy. So, wasn't it in Pillars 1 they wanted to also outlaw animancy in the Dyrwood? Huh. They're very, like, traditionalist, I guess, right? Especially if you consider that all of the tradition comes from the Aedirn Empire. Interesting. Holy shit, they are pretty shitty. And of course, their discourse about it being linked to Wydwin's legacy and animancy and Wydwin's legacy being linked, which if you remember, Wydwin's legacy is the big problem with all the stillbirthing. It was the major fucking plot point of Pillars 1. All that turned out to be bullshit. It wasn't animancy at all. It was... Well, I guess in a way it was animancy, but not in the way that they thought. It was Theos pulling shit. It was the leaden key. Huh. I can't remember. Did the leaden key actually work with the Dozens directly, or did they simply, like, use them as a tool? Maybe? That is very fascinating shit. Wild. Okay. Yeah. Let's stash that. The Fangs. This is the Glonfathan group that, like, attacked Admeth Hadrid, right? As I've stated, not much is known about this group by the world at large because they don't welcome outsiders into their numbers. While many believe they are xenophobic and openly hostile to all who enter Air Glonfath, the truth doesn't seem to be as broad or deadly, and certainly not that simple. Yeah, it's probably they came off that way because people were, like, violently colonizing and enslaving their people. I mean, I would be pretty fucking mad at a group that were doing the same shit, right? That's pretty fucked up. That's pretty high up there in the worst shit you can do to other human beings. Or kith, I should say. There are many places in Air Glonfath that could be called magical or sacred to the Glonfathans. One legend states that the Ingwithans who had suddenly abandoned their kingdom and left for places unknown, took the time to guide the ancient Glonfathan tribes into the now vacant land. The Glonfathans were gifted with the fertile area as their new homeland, but in return for being given such a gift, an oath was required. The Glonfathans were instructed to protect the Engwithan ruins until such time as they could return and reclaim the ruins. They were required to swear that no living person, including the Glonfathans themselves, would be permitted entrance into the ruins. Differing accounts suggest that the Glonfathans were promised more than a homeland, that the Engwithans were the favored people of the gods, and that keeping their oaths would confer similar benefits to the Glonfathans in the end. Oh shit. Interesting. Differing accounts suggest that Glonfathans were promised more than a homeland, that the Engwithans were the favored people of the gods. What if the reason for the Engwithans' disappearance is that they all became gods? What if, like, maybe not their entire society, but the majority of their society all, like, had to kill themselves in order to attain godhood? What if that's how it all went down? And that's why there's, like, such a vast pantheon of gods, is because, like, this entire civilization, like, wiped itself out, in a sense, in order to, like, become, I don't know, a hive mind? Like, how many are there? 12? How many gods are there? 12 of them? But, in order to combine themselves into all this shit. What if that's exactly what fucking happened? Like, how many, we still don't have an answer for, like, how many, I don't think we do, but we don't have an answer for how many people it took to create one god. We definitely know it was just more than, like, one person, right? Though certainly there, like, one individual is very important, like in the case of Scan. Either that or the concept of Scan was based off of that individual. I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll get more out of this as we go to Ukaizo, right? Oddly, the rules do not seem to apply as strictly within the borders of Twin Elms, a site built upon a large concentration of Engwithan structures. But it would seem that this is unlikely a selective oversight on the part of the Glonfathans, and more probably part of the terms of the original compact. In any case, the Glonfathans came to take their role as guardians seriously, revering the sites and developing rituals designed to protect and guard the ruins. Over time, these rituals became rote formality to some, as much legend and superstition as any other stories passed down. This is not to say the Glonfathans ceased all attempts to uphold their oath. See the section about the 10 Years' Treaties in my book about Admethadrid. But the intense devotion to the oath tended to vary from tribe to tribe and clan to clan. Not so much with the Fangs, however. The Fangs are a group joined not by ties of kinship or even community, but of belief. Of all the groups of Glonfath, it is the Fangs who seem most intent on keeping the promise their ancestors made to the Engwithans. Just because their fanaticism and zeal are not as widely sweeping as many think, does not make them any less dangerous. The Fangs are not known to reason with those they view as transgressors. If they feel you have in any way violated the sanctity of a sacred place, their judgment is swift and exact. Reports of the Fangs' attacks can be found in records dating back to the first colonial explorations of Glonfath, and even the smallest of a perceived slight can be worthy of execution. The order itself seemed to consist mainly of hunters. Whether they are recruited as skilled hunters or trained once they gain access to the order, it is unknown. From all accounts, once they join the Fangs, hunting game falls second behind patrolling Glonfath and protecting the ruins. So it's the author's opinion that it is the former. Let me just reread this bit here so I can, like, pull it in a bit more. There are many places in Glonfath that could be called magical or sacred to the Glonfathans. One legend states that the Engwithans who had suddenly abandoned their kingdom and left for places unknown took the time to guide the ancient Glonfathan tribes into the now vacant land. The Glonfathans were gifted with the fertile area as their new homeland, but in return for being given such a gift, an oath was required. Interesting. And if we know that the Ingwithans created the gods, do you think the Glonfathans knew? Or just knew roughly that the Ingwithans were somehow linked? Interesting. So how were the Glonfathan tribes set up relative to the Ingwithans? Like, as far as technological advances, like, were the Ingwithans more technologically, or at least with regards to animancy, were they more advanced than the Glonfathans? And like, what's it called in like sci-fi when a highly advanced civilization discovers one that is still in like early eras of technology? They like elevate them? Is that what it's called? Makes me miss Stellaris, but nonetheless, is that what the Ingwithans did with the Glonfathans? Huh. Interesting. Wild. Okay, yeah. Man, a lot of these books are very pertinent. Alright, cool. The Erotian calendar. And we don't really need to read this. This is very through to the point. Well, we'll read the first part until we get to the actual naming conventions, right? We'll at least learn about the history of it. The Erotian calendar. Anni Erotio, the new year. While only 150 years old and of Valian origin as well. Where even are they located? Let's see if maybe this can give us some insight into their situation on the continent that the Deerwood occupies. Once the crown jewel of the southern seas, Old Valia is now the crumbled remnants of an empire of warring merchant nations, counting many humans and dwarves among their ranks. The old Valian countries are still forces to be reckoned with, and are proud of their rich cultural heritage. The southernmost of the old empires, Old Valia suffered a similar fate to their northern neighbors, the Aedirans, in losing their most prosperous colonial territories, the Valian republics. Many Old Valians in the Deadfire archipelago are associated with the Principes and Patrena, a vast coalition of pirates. There must be information somewhere, because this definitely hints at it. Okay. Anyway. Let's see here. Where did we leave off? While only 150 years old and of Valian origin as well, the Erotian calendar is currently used throughout most of the Deerwood and the surrounding areas. While the Deerwood was using the Aediran calendar until recently, they gave it up in favor of the Erotian calendar. The transition was easy to get people to make because the Aediran calendar was hopelessly inaccurate. Weird. I wonder why. Was it just literally like advancement of the ability to catalog time? Like we've had similar things in the real world, right? Is that it? Or is there actually some like high fantasy reason as to why it was hopelessly inaccurate? Erotio calculated that it takes the planet approximately 334 days to orbit the sun. So, he took the 9 months from the Aediran calendar and broke them into 16 months of 20 days each, with each season consisting of 4 months. The length of each month corresponds to how long it takes Balatha, one of our moons, to circle the planet. At the end of each season, 3 days, not part of either season, are set aside for people to celebrate the transitions. Lastly, the final 2 days of the year, New Year and Mid-Year, are used to observe the beginning and midpoint of the year. To prevent any confusion for the transition from the old calendar to the new, Erotio kept the year the same. So, although the calendar has only been in existence for 150 years, it is currently 2823 AI, Anni Erotio. Erotio gave the months Valian names, but the Deerwood and surrounding areas, they call them by their translated names. Right. Similar to our Gregorian calendar, right? Interesting stuff. I do kind of like that they made it a little bit more simple and easy to grasp than, like, our real-life calendar. Right? Because it's a big ask to establish, like, a method of keeping time that is as irregular as ours. Whereas here, it's very nice and neat. Although it's different from ours, it's very neatly done. Like an even number, 334 days. Close to our own, right? Not exactly there, short by about 30. But it's neatly split into 16 months of 20 days each, right? With each season consisting of 4 months. Pretty good. They just happen to have more seasons, right? Like they have pre-winter and pre-spring and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. Very neat. We'll take all that. Yeah, geez, holy crap. We didn't read all too much, but what we did read was extremely pertinent to goings-on in not only Pillars of Eternity 2, I think, but also the Aedaran Empire, which will have some impact on Avowed, right? Regardless of where it's set, because we definitely know for a fact that the Aedaran Empire is heavily involved in that game. We just don't know, like, to what degree, to what end, right? Very, very mysterious, very interesting. All right. Holy shit, once again, I didn't think we would do it again, but we've once again filled a vast amount of time with just reading. And I think, judging by the look of this room, we will do it again. I think when we get done with this, like, immense readathon, I'll like, title the video, like, the reading has finally ended. Something like that. Something along those lines. All right. Nonetheless, appreciate anyone who's, like, sticking through this and, like, hearing, like, this lore theory crafting, right? I don't know. I have so much fucking fun with it. Like I said before, I've really enjoyed it, especially even more so with the announcement of Avowed. It's been really neat to revisit these older books. Not just with, like, the context of ideas surrounding Avowed, but also new context and understanding we have of the world, right? Because one of the issues with Pillars 1 is that it's so dense with world building that it's hard as shit to grasp, right? There's just so much and, like, so many proper nouns that it's so easy to get easily mixed up and to, like, comprehend it. So you really need to spend a lot of time in that world, or just be incredibly competent at your like reading comprehension, I guess, in order to, like, take it in and internalize it and have it all stick, right? Which certainly is something I'm not great at, especially when I'm recording, right? I feel like my skill in everything dips a little bit whenever I'm recording something, because obviously you just have to devote more brain power to, like, even on a base level, just speaking. All right. Well, holy shit. Once again, we have made but mere footsteps around here. But good lord, we've had some wild-ass revelations. Like, the stuff about the dozens I found especially interesting, especially in the year 2020. Damn. All right. Great. Well, when next we come back, we'll probably check out this room because it looks like there's more reading. And my god, hopefully we finish up the reading, but also at the same time, I kind of hope we don't, but you know what? Fuck it, we're like 200 videos deep in this. Why the fuck not? Let's go all the way in, right? Shit, why the hell not? All right, until next time, please take care of each other.